burns, the ring.
You know, I forgot to tell you that Viggo Mortensen is also in Reclaiming the Blade. And this is a 2-disc special. So before our guests leave you, I'm going to have the director tell you where you can get a copy of it. Well, reclaimingtheblade.com is one place, and it's going to hit TV and stores very, very soon if it hasn't already hit. I was lucky. I got this like 2 months ago and saw it before anybody else had, and so I'm not up to date on where it is and where it's airing, but I know it's going to be on TV or has already been on a bunch of TV stations. So we'll find out all those details with the director, Daniel McNichol, here in just a moment. But I'm telling you, I am blown away by talking to the man who played all these great roles that I was just such a fan of as a kid, but even modern day. I love Lord of the Rings. I'm always talking about Washington, D.C., and these major capitals as Mordor and the all-seeing eye of Sauron looking down on us. And John Rhys-Davies is, of course, Gimli. Will I have to run all the way to Isengard? I'm probably torturing him doing his lines.
That's a very good representation of that, yes, right. But you see, Lord of the Rings is very much about that. It's very much about a challenge coming to your civilization that will either destroy your civilization or you must rise and stand up and fight for it. And if you don't, you'll lose your civilization. And if you do, you might just save it.
Now we've got Gimli on the air with us. Gimli, what was it like working with Aragorn of Arathorn?
Aragorn, he's the best. I mean, as men go, he's just about the best. They were all a grand bunch assisting me in the recovery of that ring. I must say, they all did very well. But it is essentially a dwarf story, about the recovery of the ring, with the help of hobbits and others. Yes.
Well, the ring did come from below the ground, and that's the realm of dwarves.
That's right. It was our goal originally, I fear. But you've got to be careful of the concentration of power, you see. Power does corrupt, and absolute power does corrupt absolutely.
One ring to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them?
One ring to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them. In the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie.
Oh, my God. You know what? I really want to get you back on sometime because this has been an amazing interview. You're even got more energy in person, and it's just a lot of fun because I'm a big fan of those movies as well. And then to find out you're a lover of liberty and a patriot. Before we go to the director, and you've been gracious to stay with us while the director's on with us, we were kind of ranting during the breaks talking, and you were bringing up some of the other tyrannies that Europe and England are coming under that were outraging you and that have the rest of the citizenry outraged. What are some of the other beefs that you have with what's happening right now in Europe and England?
Well, in Britain in particular, our Chancellor, who is a man, our ex-Chancellor, who is now our Prime Minister, is a man of extraordinary self-delusion. I mean, he really did believe that his activity saved the world during the banking crisis. He is confidently saying that, he will not cut public services. At a time when, for instance, 100,000 private sector jobs were lost, he managed to add 30,000 public sector employees. In the end, you cannot spend your way out of debt. In the end, everyone in the private sector supports all the people in the public sector. In the end, government works for us, not for us working for the government. These are just inalienable truths, but somehow they seem to be forgotten so easily by every damn Tom and political jack. Sorry.
No, you're right, but it's a vertically integrated economy. And it's same here in the United States. Everything's collapsing. We're losing 640+ thousand jobs a month, and they're expanding the size of government, and they're increasing all the taxes, and the shops are starting to all close, and the government says, we're going to hold you by your legs, and like the sheriff of Nottingham, and shake the shillings out of your pockets. I mean, it's almost like they want us to have a revolution. It's like they want to force us into confrontation.
Well, I don't think it's that. There is a belief that if you hold circuses and give bread and just give and give and give, then you will create an electric that's wholly obligated to you. Unfortunately, in the end, the buck has to stop somewhere, and the only way out of it is that government will have to start printing paper. You know, and I've lived in societies where inflation has gone to 3%, 4%, 5% a day. Imagine having save up your life savings is $10,000. It's a good little hunk. With that $10,000, you can actually do something. And in the space of 1 year, that $10,000 isn't worth enough to buy your family a meal. You imagine how mad you'd be. And that was Yugoslavia, just 15, 18 years ago, 20 years ago.
Well, look at Zimbabwe. Look at other. I mean, look. In fact, all this money they've spent is guaranteed to start coming back in. We're already seeing inflation in many areas go up, even though housing's going down. It's kind of a nightmare stag inflation that's starting to set in.
Yes, indeed. And the damnable thing is, you see, in a way, spending your way out of inflation, out of depression, is a theoretically interesting way of doing it. But you have to really have to have growth in place, or the seeds of growth in place that will match the investment that you're putting into things.
Instead, it all goes for bonuses to offshore banks, and the carbon tax is a wet blanket on that economy.
The carbon tax is just a load of twaddle. It's just an extra way of taxing people. That's all.
And I'm sorry for interrupting you when you were getting into matching actual development. I guess like monorail trains, better roads. Instead, more and more just goes for debt, servicing the debt like we are Zimbabwe as everything collapses. I don't know about England. I was just over there a few years ago, but we have bridges collapsing every week. The roads are rotting. I mean, you go to stores now and the carpet's peeling up.
Well, we're now paying, I think, more to service our debt than we spend on defense, and I've got an idea it must be rapidly approaching what we spend on education. Amazing.
Well, John,
it's terrifying.
John Rhys-Davies is our guest. He doesn't need any introduction. You know, Sala from, of course, the Raiders of the Lost Ark and other Indiana Jones films with Harrison Ford, of course, a huge star in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and so many other huge films. Before we get in the remaining minutes with the director into Reclaiming the Blade, you're just a very interesting man, obviously, but I mean, seriously, you really are. What are some of your other interests? What else is on your mind? What else are you working on right now?
I just did a little radio thing today, which is why I was a little bit late coming back. But my private passions, well, I have a 3-year-old daughter who is the love of my life. I'm extraordinarily happy at this moment in time in my life. The last four and a half years have been extremely happy. I play with cars. I have a disgraceful collection of wonderful cars that I really should thin down, but it's rather like sort of working, you know, and I don't want to use the word mockingly, but it's a sort of Sophie's choice that you have to make when you try to get rid of one. I mean, you can't possibly let that one go because, well, you know, or that one, so you end up keeping the ball, really. But I like engineering. I like getting up in the morning and getting my hands dirty, or writing or something like that.
And you're also into swords. You're somewhat of a swordsman yourself.
I used to be. Unfortunately, I broke my back and my arm on a film set about 6 years ago. And
I didn't know that.
I moved from being a fairly hard old man, really, to being an old wimp. But I have to confess that even before Daniel's thing came, I do sleep with a samurai sword beside my bed, and it is sharp. Burglars should be aware of this. I tend to swing rather heavily, just in case we get a visitor.
Incredible, absolutely incredible. Wow, I didn't know you'd broken your back and your arm. What film was that?
Oh, it really, called La Femme Musketeer. But it had some nice people in it, Michael York and the great Depardieu and a few others.
But you're doing better now. I mean, you certainly sound good.
I am good. If it wasn't for that wretched back of mine, I would be in extraordinary good health. And every time I start feeling poor me, I suddenly start thinking, you could be a quadriplegic or you could be dead. Think about that, old man. And yes, suddenly my aches and pains don't seem to matter.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And you live on the Isle of Man.
Victims. Pardon?
You live on the Isle of Man.
Yes, I have a place here. I've had a place here for about 20-odd years.